on stage. To jump right in, how many people are working in your studio?
So while we entered as a studio, we actually we consist, the Tata Design Network consists of 3 studios. Pune, of course, is the biggest because that's where we are based, an Indian company. So we have about 110 people here. I call it the mothership. And then we have 2 more studios, one based out of Turin and one in Coventry. And together we are about 200, 210 people. So that's Tata Motors Design Network for you. So I hope that doesn't disqualify me from the entry, but we actually 3 studios in the network.
Okay. Why not in Germany?
The engineers set up the business there. No, but no, for us it was more, for Turin it was, of course, it's obvious for car design. That's where the heart of car design started, and it consisted there. UK happened by piggybacking onto an engineering center we were setting up there because we needed to access technology. And for a comfort of an Indian with an English language is much higher than German. You know, we found more people who could go and work out of England than out of Germany. So I was not there with the company that time, but I assume that was the logic which was at the back of the mind of people who set it up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, as a German, I had to ask why you're not in Germany. Okay, let's talk about education. And is it difficult for you to find staff? I mean, maybe first from the Indian perspective, is it difficult for you to find Indian designers? And then is there a difference to international designers? Do you have difficulties finding international designers?
So for us, 2 biggest challenges have been, and if you look at automotive design typically, what we design for would come into the market, say, 3 to 5 years from today. And it would need to be relevant and contextual to a buyer for maybe another 10 years. So we then need to understand from a designer's perspective, what does he need to design which will still remain relevant and contemporary, say 12 years from now. Now that, I think, in Indian education, at least I know of, is not an input which is very strongly given to students. They are taught skills, they're taught some thinking skills, but how to anticipate trends, how to anticipate what the form language is going towards, what technology is going towards, is not something which is grilled into them, but for automotive design, that's at the core of the whole thing. Which is where the second part comes in, that now these people have to be mentored by people who have experience, you know, who have done 3 projects into production. And now in India, automotive design per se is a very young field. Transportation design is still younger. You know, NID started the first transportation design program, I don't know what, 10 years back. You know, so if I have to find a guy who has got 3 projects under his belt who can mentor youngsters, I can't find them in India. So we actually had to step out and get people from Australia, from UK, from Germany. We have a French guy working with us who actually brought that knowledge in and who could handhold the youngster to say, how do you anticipate, how do you extrapolate, you know, and how do you foresee what's next, kind of thing, beyond your basic skills of thinking, sketching, just creating.
And the reason why I'm asking, maybe I mean, it's called a roast, so it's a little bit critical question, but to frame it a little bit maybe more nicely is to compare it maybe with Volkswagen. They come from Wolfsburg. Nobody probably knows Wolfsburg is a small city in Germany. And they have problems getting staff, getting designers, because the designer says, Wolfsburg, you know, like, I can work in California, so why should I come to Wolfsburg? So do you have similar problems here that international designers say, well, Pune, I don't know it. Why should I go here? And what do you do to tackle this? So Volkswagen, for example, they have built museums, they have a lot of stuff to encourage them to come. So do you have similar problems?
The biggest attraction that we could offer, and which is I think what attracted people to come to Pune to work, was in any OEM globally, the amount of influence they could bring to design in their studio was very minimal, because the process was established. There were 100 people like them working there, and here they could come and help us establish. Because, I mean, for you it may be not known, but Tata Motors was not known for design, say, 6 years back. In fact, we were known some time back and then we lost it in between. And then 6 years back, we were given a mandate that we should be known for design and we should be in a leadership position in every segment that we operate. And that was a challenge that we took up, basically. So that was the carrot that we held out, saying you can influence much more here in this studio where we are starting from scratch than you can do in any European or American OEM. And that, we got people who thought like that, and that's what worked for us.
Okay. Very interesting, very interesting. How independent, are you independent in any way, or are you 100% company owned, and do you do any outside work, for example? So you're 100%?
So we're 100% within the company, maybe too embedded. We would like to break out sometime, but at the moment the amount of work that we have to do within is so humongous that we actually could double our capacity and still not meet the requirement of what we need to do. But yes, to take a chance and break out and do something different would always be very refreshing. Yeah. But why not? I mean, but not in the very near future. Yeah.
Okay, so you only do transportation design?
Only transportation, but transportation design by itself has so many manifestations. And today with technology coming in, the whole experience design aspect coming in, I mean, I think we are kind of reinventing automotive design, which has gone beyond form. You know, I mean, the whole digital experience, the whole experience of materials, finishes, I mean, the field is huge, kind of thing. So for us, I don't think anybody ever wants to do anything else.
Okay,
kind of
okay. It was just a critical question, let's say. Transportation design, for me, is one of the crowns of industry design because it combines so many different elements together. But let's talk about the standing the design department has within the company. You just said like 6 years ago, basically there was a reset. And as far as I understand Tata right now from a European perspective, they highly compete on price, which is for a design department always difficult. I think it's much more difficult to make an entry-level product than to make a premium product. With a premium product, you can use all the materials you like. So how difficult is it for you to get this across to say, okay, if we only compete on price, we will run into problems in the long run because our brand image is tied to this price issue and not to quality. So could you tell a little bit about this?
So, I mean, for us, the whole change that we went through has a context to it. I mean, at one time, we had a chairman who was very passionate about design, Mr. Tata himself, and he drove most of the work in the studio. And I mean, I was not there at that time, unfortunately, but he spent more time in the studio than he spent, say, with engineering or with the marketing and stuff like that. So for us, we didn't really have to drive, and at that time, the Indian market was simpler. You know, there were not many products. People still, transportation was the basic need. So people wanted mobility, and they didn't have too many choices. So it was still a seller's market, you know, and whatever we did, and we did good products at that time for that time frame of frame of reference. In between, the transition happened when global competition came in. People had choices at every price point, and we didn't move fast enough. And we had a change of chairman because he retired, and we were asked to kind of suddenly stand on our own feet and saying, what does the customer want? Yeah? Now, while we started changing, the rest of the company could not change fast enough. And being a very rational company, like you said, and it was a very difficult challenge to say, stand in front of management and say, the engineer would say this will cost more, take longer time, more investment, and we would say, but it will look nice, you know? So the discussion was a no-brainer. But like I said, the mandate given to us was design has to be in leadership position. So management was firm on that aspect that they had to change their own thinking. And if they did not, we would still be competing on value terms, you know? And that change was what allowed us to experiment, to put more value, to justify, you know, to put a paint which never would have gone through, say 3 years back or 4 years back. So it was a big battle. It still is. I'm not saying it's over as yet, because while the management may change their mind, there are only 5 of them or 6 of them, to change 3,000 engineers, that is a huge, huge challenge. So we still have a long way to go, but I think the success of products in the market is the best argument you can give to anybody. You know, so today the engineer who was fighting with me till yesterday for that 5 rupees taking off now proudly says, I designed that product. You know? So that's the rest of the whole case for us, next time when we're arguing.
How do you, I mean, you were talking before about the long span that you as a automotive designer have to consider, because the car you're working on right now comes onto the market maybe in 5 or 10 years. How do you measure? I think one of the problems of design is the lacking measurability of the aesthetic part, right? And how do you tackle that, right? An engineer can say, okay, my engine is 1.5% more efficient. A designer, how can he get across to the engineers, to the management, to the controlling, that his design is better than the one before? Those people don't have a mindset for aesthetics. So how do you support that? Do you do customer insight? But that's also some difficulties. But
I mean, there's no easy answer, frankly. I mean, especially coming from where people's aesthetic sensibilities. I mean, you ask somebody, what's your first choice when you look at a product? What do you buy on? You know, they'll say design. But you ask them, what of design? What did you like of this, you know? And then things become a little fuzzy in the answer. Now, for example, in a vehicle, I firmly believe that which car will you buy, that decision has been taken long before you ever went to the showroom. Because you identify that that's the brand for me, that's the vehicle for me, because it reflects my personality. I see something of that, me in that vehicle. But in India, especially, I think, I don't know about other countries, men especially cannot be emotional. So you have to rationalize that decision, you know. Then you say, talk about sales, service cost of ownership, fuel efficiency. And because amongst your peers, you can't say, I like this car, bought this car because I like the design only. You know, you have to have a checklist ready, maybe a table, to be a little more smarter kind of thing. Now for us, that's a challenge, because when we go out and we ask the guy, what of this do you like? You know, one, the language they use is something we have to decipher, you know, get beyond the first answer, level 3, level 4 kind of thing. The second part is that guy doesn't even know what shirt will he wear tomorrow, or what color will he choose for his house paint when he paints it. Now I'm asking him, tell me what you like 2 years from now. You know, so that's the challenge, and I don't think that's only for us, that's any automotive company. And sometimes you just play it by the ear, you understand what the trend is, you understand how the things are moving, and go by a gut feel, you know. And I think something works, some does not work. For us, last 3 products that we have put in the market, touchwood worked for us, you know.
And let's talk a little bit about local or national focus and international focus. Would you say Tata has right now a more, let's say, national or regional focus or an international focus?
So the team that looks after design has both commercial and passenger vehicles that we look after. While on passenger vehicle, our focus is very, very local. But having said that, we have every global OEM operating in India today. So I cannot have a local focus which does not meet international standards. So for us, we have to compete on the same terms as any German or American or a Japanese OEM. So while the focus is from a marketing point of view is very Indian, from a design point of view, it has to be a global benchmark. Yeah.
So you're not working on a specific Indian identity concerning the aesthetics, or you do?
So we are looking at Indian identity more in terms of use case scenarios. How would people use the car? How would they interact with the car? How will they abuse the car? But in terms of aesthetics, it's a form language which is very global. But at the same time, we are using Indian elements in a very contemporary manner. For example, if you look at the front grille that we have used, the inspiration from that was from the jali pattern or the mesh from Jaipur Hawa Mahal, you know. But we interpret in a manner which people can't link it till they get the aha moment, if they ever get. But we don't push that, you know, because we need something, our designer tie ourselves down onto some roots somewhere, kind of thing. But if you look at the form, it's as contemporary as any other form would be in any country.
And maybe one last question, because I want to open it to the audience as well. From my point of view, there's a big difference in the value a car has in the West, let's say in Germany or the United States. The young people, for them, it's more a burden. It's hurting the environment. They have to pay insurance. They have to pay monthly fees or something like that. So it's not a status symbol anymore. They don't care about cars. They care more about their mobile phone than to have a nice car. I imagine in emerging markets, it's different, right? The car is still a symbol for freedom, like it was in Europe maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And also technology is changing, right? With the electric car and let's say the carbon century or centuries, the carbon industry is going away. So how do you challenge that? If you have an international focus and on the international market, the car is slowly going obsolete, let's say, to make it very extreme statement, let's say, and in the East maybe it's still a status symbol. So do you think it will change in the East, or and are you preparing for this transformation, or do you think no, there's still a lot of potential in the East to carry on the technology?
One thing I realize about India, at least, and I think it's more as a truth, at least to me, is there's no one truth. You know, everything coexists. So for somebody in a B town, a car is still a status symbol, and I have to cater to his or her need. But in big cities, where owning a vehicle has become a stress generator, you know, and that's why companies who have shared mobility are becoming very popular, where you pay for a ride, get off, you don't worry about parking, you don't worry about a carbon footprint, you don't worry about congestion. You know, if you're in a traffic jam, you get out and walk, take the cab from the next side. So everything coexists. And India, I think, will maybe leapfrog what Germany or France or UK went to. Now, what the answer will be, I don't know. But for us, we have to be prepared to handle every aspect of it. So at least for the company that Tata Motors is, we have both a very strong commercial base and a very strong personal mobility base. And we will develop both, basically. But answer to that, I don't have an absolute answer. What form will it take?
I think nobody has. Okay, so let's open up for questions from the audience. Yeah, there's one from the gentleman over there.
If anybody wants to know how we named the studio, please let me know. Tata Motors Design.
Thanks, Pankaj. You initiated the discussion between what academia is right now missing. In the sense of current thing, what's happening.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm just talking about the point that you raised, that in academia there are a lot of things that right now are missing. And a lot of design schools are coming up right now. And all of them are following that usual traditional structure that most of the premier institute, say for NID, Bauhaus and Ulm, they have got long back. Now we are repeating those things again and again, not coming up with something new. So how industry can collaborate or contribute to these things so that we can actually come up with some new, strong subjects to teach, which are contemporary by nature?
I think most of the industry does it, and some do it more actively than the others, where we actually participate and work back with the academia to say what are our emerging needs. You know, and one of the most emerging needs today is, for example, the boundaries of product design, graphic design. I mean, they have to go, you know, because when a consumer gets into a vehicle, for example, he experiences 3 different elements at the same time, you know. And and if you look at the modern smartphones, where does product design end and where does digital design start, you know, and where does user interface design contribute? Those boundaries are getting fuzzy, and unless the students understand the cross-domain sensibilities they have that, you know, I don't know how we will handle that kind of thing. Today still is happening because you push them into a room, kind of they talk to each other and all that, but it's getting more complex now. You know, I can tell you, JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, is one of the group companies. 3 years back, they started a small team with 4 people in what they call experience design. Today they have 500 people in that department, you know, and they've just put 4 different domain specializations together and saying work together,
Yeah, I think that's the, if I might answer the question as well, I think that's the old question of playing with archetypes, right? And I think the car industry has a huge responsibility. If you're a graphic designer, you can play around more because the investment of your client is not as high and the risk is not as high. In the car industry, you cannot just play around with forms and do something really extreme. That's what the show cars are for. But for the commercial market, you have a huge responsibility. There's a lot of jobs that are hung or cling to your design. So if you are doing something completely extreme to find a new archetype, for example, to change the perception how a car could look like, that would be irresponsible in a way, I guess.
Also what happens, I mean, today the people's expectations being driven by, for example, if I look at the digital experience, is being driven by the experience they are getting from their phone. You know, now they expect when they sit in a car, that experience has to extend into the car. Now imagine this guy is walking on a sidewalk and he hits somebody or bumps into somebody, says, oops, I'm sorry. You know, and now he's driving in a car, that oops is going to be very costly for both of them. You know, so for us we have to say how to manage that expectation but make it safer, how to reduce distraction. You know, and that becomes a where do we trade off and really reject my car because I made it over safe, you know, and that's where we are grappling with today. I mean, very frankly.
Okay, so I think we will have to continue. Yeah, there are a lot of questions. I think you should approach me or my discussion partner later on. I got the sign that we unfortunately do not have enough time anymore, but it's good to know that there are so many questions. Then we can continue the discussion later on. Thank you a lot for your attention.